They built this place to erase voices, to silence the worst criminals on earth. A prison so extreme that human contact itself was treated like a weapon. But concrete remembers sound. Steel carries whispers. And in the most isolated prison ever created, men still found a way to speak. Court documents from 2005 reveal a chilling discovery. Federal investigators found evidence of coordinated communications between the most dangerous inmates in America. Inside ADX Florence Supermax, where prisoners are kept in complete isolation, something impossible was happening. You're about to see how inmates declared war from inside the most secure prison ever built. How they held secret meetings when they weren't supposed to speak to anyone. And why the Bureau of Prisons tried to keep this quiet for over a decade. According to federal records, ADX Florence houses terrorists, cartel leaders, and mass murderers. They're kept in 23-hour lockdown. Concrete walls 7 feet thick. Sensors tracking every movement. But in 2005, investigators discovered something that should have been impossible. A communication network operating right under the guards' noses. What you'll learn in the next few minutes will change how you think about prison security forever. ADX Florence opened in November 1994 in Fremont County, Colorado. The Bureau of Prisons designed it with one purpose: to break the most dangerous criminals in America. According to former Warden Robert Hood, who ran the facility from 2002 to 2005, ADX was built to eliminate all human contact. Quote, "This isn't prison. It's a clean version of hell. Each cell measures 7 by 12 feet. Poured concrete furniture. A single window 4 inches wide, positioned so inmates can't see anything except sky. Meals delivered through slots. Showers 3 times a week alone." Bureau of Prisons data from 2008 shows ADX held some of the most notorious criminals ever convicted. Ramzi Youssef, who bombed the World Trade Center in 1993. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Luis Felipe, who ran the Latin Kings from prison. Oklahoma City bomber Terry Nichols. 9/11 conspirator Zacarias Moussaoui. El Chapo's enforcer. These men had proven they could orchestrate violence from behind bars. That's why they were sent to ADX. Former correctional officer James Williams testified in a 2012 lawsuit. "We were told these inmates would never communicate with each other. The system was foolproof. We believed it. But by 2003, something was changing inside ADX. Patterns emerged that guards couldn't explain, and it would take a violent incident to expose the truth. Inside ADX, 3 unwritten rules governed everything. Rules the Bureau of Prisons never acknowledged. Rules that multiple former inmates described in court testimony and interviews with journalists. According to testimony from inmate Thomas Silverstein, who spent 36 years in solitary before his death in 2019. The guards watch how you react. Cry, and they know they can break you. Show fear during a cell extraction, and it gets worse. Prison records from 2004 document 47 4-cell extractions at ADX that year. These occur when inmates refuse orders. Teams in riot gear use pepper spray, tasers, physical force. Former inmate Gregory Hale testified in the 2012 Cunningham versus Federal Bureau of Prisons case. You learn fast. Don't give them a reason. Don't react. Become stone. The second rule involved that 4-inch window. According to multiple inmate accounts documented by investigative journalist Alan Prendergast in Westward magazine, that tiny slice of sky became a battlefield. Why? Because in the exercise cages, outdoor pens with metal grating overhead, some cells aligned. If you knew which hour you'd be in the cage, and if you knew who'd be in the adjacent cage, you could position yourself at the fence. Court documents from the 2005 investigation reveal this is how the first contacts were made. Voices carried through the chain link. 2 inmates, 30 feet apart, could speak. For the first time in years, they weren't alone. The third rule was the most dangerous. According to testimony from multiple inmates, the Bureau of Prisons used informants extensively. A 2010 Inspector General report acknowledged that ADX staff offered sentence reductions and prison transfers in exchange for information. Quote, Incentive programs were utilized to gather intelligence on inmate communications. Former gang leader Luis Felipe testified in a 2009 hearing that he trusted no one. They want you paranoid. Paranoid men don't organize. Paranoid men don't resist. But paranoia has limits. And by 2004, some inmates decided the risk was worth it. What happened next would expose a flaw the architects never saw coming. A flaw built into the concrete itself. The 2005 federal investigation, led by Inspector General Glenn Fine, uncovered something extraordinary. Court records show investigators found evidence of a communication network using the prison's own infrastructure. The plumbing system. According to the investigation report, ADX's design required connecting all cell toilets to a shared drainage system. Standard construction. But what engineers didn't account for was acoustics. Former ADX inmate Jesse Guzman testified in 2007. You'd remove water from your toilet using a cup. Create an air pocket. If you enjoy real, gripping prison documentaries and true stories, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with your friends and family. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss more shocking and exclusive content. Then you'd speak into the bowl. Your voice carries through the pipes. Someone 3 cells down, 2 tiers up, could hear you. Investigators documented that inmates called this method the pipeline. According to Bureau of Prisons records, guards didn't detect it for years because it required silence. Inmates would time their communications for overnight hours when foot patrols were lighter. But the plumbing wasn't the only vulnerability. The investigation also revealed exploitation of the ventilation system. ADX architect David Albaugh testified in 2006 that the HVAC system was designed to prevent tampering. But according to prison incident reports obtained by the ACLU through FOIA requests, inmates discovered they could remove vent covers using makeshift tools. With the cover removed, voices could travel through connected air ducts. Former guard Marcus Thompson told investigators, "We'd hear echoes sometimes. We thought it was the system settling. We never imagined they were talking to each other." The third method was oldest. Court records describe what inmates call kites, written messages passed between cells. How do you pass notes when you're locked in concrete boxes? According to testimony from inmate Michael Swanson in 2008, they used the meal slots. When food trays were delivered, a small gap existed for seconds. Some inmates would attach tiny rolled papers to strings made from pulled threads of their uniforms. They'd slip the string under their door into the corridor. If the timing was perfect, and if a trusted inmate in an adjacent cell was receiving a meal simultaneously, the string could be caught. The message pulled across. Bureau records show this method was risky. Guards conducted random cell searches. Getting caught with contraband meant immediate disciplinary segregation, even more severe isolation. But according to the 2005 investigation, some inmates believed the risk was worth it because they weren't just passing gossip. They were coordinating something far more dangerous, something that would lead to the most serious security breach in ADX history. His name was Abdullah Al-Faisal, born Trevor William Forrest in Jamaica, convicted in 2003 for soliciting murder and inciting racial hatred, extradited to the United States in 2004 on terrorism charges. According to his prison file, obtained through litigation by his defense attorneys, Al-Faisal was classified as a Level 6 security risk, the highest designation. He was placed in ADX's H unit, reserved for inmates with terrorism connections. Court testimony from 2007 describes what happened next. Al-Faisal began using the toilet communication method within weeks of arrival. His first contact was with an inmate named Michael Fenton, also known as Talib Islam. Fenton had been at ADX since 2003. According to the Bureau's investigation, he'd already established pipeline connections with at least 5 other inmates. He taught Al-Faisal the timing, the technique. Former ADX psychologist Dr. Raymond Patterson testified that Al-Faisal's isolation had severe effects. Quote, "After 6 months in solitary, some inmates experience auditory hallucinations, paranoia, cognitive deterioration. The need for human contact becomes overwhelming." Investigative records show that by January 2005, Al-Faisal was communicating with 6 other inmates regularly. They had a schedule, Tuesdays and Fridays, between 2 and 3 in the morning. In another documented case, investigators discovered that inmate Robert LeVar Johnson had been using the ventilation system to communicate with cells above and below him. Johnson's court records from 2006 reveal his role. He wasn't a terrorist. He wasn't a gang leader. He was what investigators called a hub, someone whose cell position allowed him to relay messages between disconnected parts of the network. According to testimony, Johnson would receive messages through the vents from the tier above, then relay them through the toilet pipes to inmates below. He was a connection point. So what were they actually coordinating? The 2005 investigation revealed multiple objectives. First, work stoppages. ADX inmates with minimal security violations could work in prison industries. According to Bureau records, the network organized a coordinated refusal to work in March 2005. 14 inmates simultaneously refused work assignments on March 8, 2005. This was documented in incident reports. Guards were confused because these inmates had no direct contact. The refusal was precisely timed. The second objective was more sophisticated. Court filings from the Cunningham case show inmates were coordinating legal strategies. Multiple inmates filed similar grievances and lawsuits alleging Eighth Amendment violations, cruel and unusual punishment through extreme isolation. According to attorney Laura Rovner, who represented several ADX inmates, the coordination was obvious. Quote from Rovner's 2012 testimony: "We'd see the same legal arguments, same phrasing, filed within days of each other by inmates who supposedly had zero contact. They were sharing information." The third objective was the most dangerous. According to the Inspector General's report, investigators found evidence that inmates were planning a coordinated hunger strike. Why was this dangerous? Because a mass hunger strike in a facility like ADX creates a medical crisis. If dozens of inmates simultaneously refuse food, the Bureau of Prisons is legally required to provide medical intervention, including forced feeding, a process that requires significant staffing and exposes the facility to legal liability. Court records indicate the planned date was June 2005, but the strike never happened because on May 12, 2005, something went wrong. A message was intercepted, and the entire network began to collapse. According to Bureau of Prisons Incident Report BOP, 2005, HC 0847, a correctional officer named William Martinez made a routine cell check on May 12, 2005. At approximately 3:15 in the afternoon, Martinez testified that he heard unusual sounds coming from the plumbing, not the normal flow of water. Something else. Voices. Martinez called for backup. Within minutes, Captain Dennis Haslett arrived. According to Haslett's testimony, they traced the sound to cell H217. Inmate Abdullah Al-Faisal. When they opened the door, Al-Faisal's toilet was dry. The water had been removed. He was speaking into the bowl. What happened next was documented in detail. The Bureau launched an immediate investigation led by Special Investigative Services Agent Rachel Ortiz. According to Ortiz's report, the team began systematically testing the plumbing and ventilation systems. They placed agents in different cells and attempted to communicate. The acoustics were clear. With water removed from toilets, voices carried through the pipes to at least 12 connected cells. The ventilation system connected even more. Inspector General Glenn Fine's final report stated, "The architectural design of ADX Florence inadvertently created acoustic pathways that defeated the isolation protocols. This represented a significant security vulnerability." Over the next 3 weeks, according to court records, investigators interviewed 43 ADX inmates. Most refused to cooperate, but some talked. Inmate Michael Fenton, facing additional charges, provided details. His testimony described the network structure: hubs, relays, scheduled communication times. According to Fenton's statement, documented in case file USA versus Fenton, the network included at least 28 inmates across 3 separate units. They've been communicating for nearly 18 months. 18 months. Hundreds of messages. Work stoppages. Legal coordination. A planned hunger strike. All under the noses of guards who believed the inmates were completely isolated. The consequences were severe. Bureau records show that all 28 identified inmates were immediately moved to disciplinary segregation. Disciplinary segregation at ADX meant even harsher conditions. According to the ACLU's 2014 report on ADX Florence, inmates in DSEG received no recreation time, no phone calls, no commissary privileges. Former Warden Robert Hood testified in 2012 about these conditions. Quote, DSEG is isolation within isolation. We're talking about human beings kept in boxes smaller than the parking space for your car. For months, sometimes years. Let's look at what happened to Robert Johnson. The hub relayed messages through his cell. Before the network's discovery, Johnson's prison file showed he'd accumulated minimal infractions. He was on track for a possible security downgrade, which would have allowed him more privileges. After May 2005, according to court records, Johnson received 367 days in disciplinary segregation. His security classification was permanently elevated. His potential transfer to a lower security facility was denied. Johnson's attorney filed appeals arguing the punishment was excessive. The appeals were denied. Johnson remained in ADX until 2019, when he was transferred due to severe mental health deterioration. Al Faisal, the inmate caught communicating on May 12th, faced different consequences. Because of his terrorism convictions, federal prosecutors added charges of inciting violence and conspiracy to violate prison security protocols. According to court record from USA versus Al Faisal, prosecutors alleged he was using the communication network to radicalize other inmates. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Former inmates testified about messages Al Faisal had sent through the pipeline. The prosecution argued he was continuing his pattern of incitement from behind bars. Al Faisal was convicted. 8 years were added to his sentence. He remains at ADX Florence today, in a cell where the toilet has been sealed with permanent concrete. He cannot access the plumbing system, so the Bureau of Prisons shut down the communication network. They punished the inmates. They sealed toilets with concrete. Case closed? Not even close. According to documents obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests by the ACLU, the Bureau of Prisons spent $2.3 million on ADX renovations between 2005 and 2008. They modified 147 cells, sealed plumbing systems, installed acoustic dampening in ventilation shafts, added sound monitoring equipment to detect voice transmissions. Bureau spokesman Chris Burke stated in 2009, "We have eliminated the architectural vulnerabilities. ADX Florence now operates as originally intended. Complete isolation." But here's what they didn't tell you. Court filings from 2012 reveal that inmates found new methods. According to testimony in the Cunningham versus Bureau of Prisons case, inmates began using the electrical systems. Former ADX inmate Lawrence Clacker testified that inmates discovered they could tap on metal light fixtures in specific patterns. The vibrations carried through electrical conduits. It was crude. It was slow. But according to Clacker's testimony, it worked. Inmates developed a tap code based on the Polybius square, an ancient cryptographic method. With this system, they could spell out messages. 1 tap, pause, 3 taps meant A. 2 taps, pause, 3 taps meant H. It took hours to send a single sentence. When guards discovered the tapping in 2013, the Bureau launched another investigation. This one was kept quiet. No public reports. No Inspector General review. But attorneys obtained details through discovery in ongoing lawsuits. According to depositions from 2015, the Bureau found evidence of a new network involving 19 inmates. This time, the Bureau's response was different. Instead of structural changes, they implemented randomized cell assignments. Inmates were moved every 90 days, sometimes more frequently. According to psychologist Dr. Craig Haney, who studies the effects of solitary confinement, this created a new problem. Quote, "Random transfers increased disorientation and psychological distress. The cure became as harmful as the disease." Multiple studies document the effects of prolonged isolation. Dr. Stuart Grassian testified in 2012 about what he observed. According to Grassian's findings, inmates exhibited hallucinations, paranoia, rage, cognitive impairment. Some lost the ability to carry on normal conversations. Former inmate Harold Murray described his experience in 2014 testimony. Quote, "After 2 years, I forgot what my mother's voice sounded like. After 4 years, I started talking to myself constantly. After 6 years, I couldn't remember why I was talking. The lawsuits keep coming." According to the Center for Constitutional Rights, there are currently 17 active cases challenging ADX conditions as unconstitutional. The central argument is simple. Prolonged isolation constitutes cruel and unusual punishment, violating the Eighth Amendment. But courts have been split. In 2012, the 10th Circuit Court ruled in Cunningham versus the Bureau of Prisons that ADX conditions, while severe, did not violate constitutional protections. The court stated that the Bureau had legitimate security concerns. But in 2017, a separate ruling found that mental health care at ADX was constitutionally inadequate. The Bureau was ordered to improve psychiatric services. Here's what this entire story reveals. The Bureau of Prisons built ADX to eliminate human contact. They spent millions perfecting the architecture. They implemented the strictest protocols ever designed. And inmates still found ways to communicate. Not because they're criminal masterminds, but because human beings are wired for connection. Isolation is so psychologically painful that people will risk severe punishment just to hear another voice. According to UN Special Rapporteur Juan Mendez, prolonged isolation meets the definition of torture. His 2011 report stated, 15 days of isolation is the maximum that human beings can endure without permanent psychological damage. 8.2 years. That's the average length of stay at ADX. This story isn't over. ADX still operates. Inmates are still fighting for contact. As of January 2026, ADX Florence houses 332 inmates. The facility remains the highest security prison in the federal system. According to the most recent Bureau of Prisons report, no major communication networks have been detected since 2015. But attorneys representing current inmates tell a different story. In sealed court filings from 2024, multiple inmates allege the existence of a new method. The details remain classified, but the allegations are serious enough that federal investigators have been assigned. So the cycle continues. The Bureau builds better isolation. Inmates find new ways to connect. Courts struggle to balance security with humanity. The question isn't whether inmates will declare war. The question is whether we've built a system that forces them to. Because when you strip away every human connection, when you isolate people for years in concrete boxes, resistance isn't just predictable. It's inevitable. They called it the most secure prison on earth. A place designed to erase voices, to break connection, to make silence permanent. And yet, the story of ADX Florence proves something unsettling. You can lock a body in concrete. You can seal the walls. You can monitor every movement. But you cannot engineer away the human need to be heard. Every system built on total isolation creates pressure. And pressure always finds a crack. Through pipes, through vents, through wires, through sound itself. So the real question isn't how inmates kept communicating. It's why a system so extreme depends on silence to survive. Because when punishment becomes absolute, when isolation lasts years instead of days, the line between security and cruelty begins to disappear. ADX Florence still stands. The doors still close. The lights still hum through concrete walls. And somewhere inside, someone is listening, waiting, testing the silence. Because as long as human beings are alive, silence is never the end of the story.